Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of PixlFeed Radio, and I'm here with my friend Brett Helling. Brett, how you doing today, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm super excited to have you on. These are the type of businesses that I love talking about. And for those of you that don't know, Brett is the founder and CEO of gigworker.com, which is a platform for the gig economy. And I want you to explain it. Because I'm sure you can do it better than I can. So why don't we explain what gigworker.com is?
Sure. So gigworker.com, we built a platform, and it's an informational whole resource. And our platform at its core matches people with jobs in the gig economy, gigs, and then provides them all the information needed to succeed. So the idea is kind of to be like, if you go to college, you have that counselor that shows you what classes to take, kind of what career path to go in based on what you like. That's what we're looking to do for the gig economy. So we're looking to simplify, the gig economy. It's very overwhelming when you first get involved and see what's out there. So our goal is to kind of demystify it, simplify it, and then allow you to do the gig that you like best.
So in a way, are you replacing like temp agencies and stuff like that for people who are looking for a job?
So in that role, no, we're just kind of making it easier for you to go and browse at your own leisure. So if you were like a high, very niche specific developer, for example, an agency would be better for you. But if you have no idea about the gig economy, you can come to us, and our platform allows you to just kind of browse and just see what's out there.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna get into more details about the platform, but before we get into it, I like to ask everyone who comes on about their background and how they got started into entrepreneurship. So the first question is always like, were you one of those kids who always had a side gig at school? How did it all start for you?
I was. So the whole side hustle thing, back when I have a twin brother, and he and I
that's an advantage.
It is, yeah. I always have a business partner. But back when we were about 12 years old, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. The law requires you to be at least 15 years old to go and get part-time employment. So even whether just, wiping tables down at a restaurant, like you have to be 15. And we were like, all right, we have these summers, when we're not playing sports, we're not doing school. What are we doing? So we thought, okay, well, let's go work, and couldn't find anybody to hire us because it was illegal to hire us. So we started a mowing company. And at the time we had like 10 lawns or something that we did every week. And back then it was pretty good money. And so that's kind of how we got into the whole thing. And that's where I really kind of developed. I mean, I'm only 12, but as a business owner, that's kind of where I just developed a skill set of, managing time, being disciplined, meeting client expectations, things like that. And then ever since then, it's just been kind of a snowball effect with, I've kind of done it all. I had to try to start an aerial videography company with the drone when they first came out. There's been a million things I've done.
It's funny. You're right. I think you're probably I want to say the third person or fifth, somewhere on there. That started mowing lawns when they were kids. Which I find interesting. And the other person that I built it into an empire pretty much, and now has the Uber of mowing grass. Like he puts together, companies and people who need their grass to be mowed. And I can't remember the name of the company top of my head, of course, but that's what he does now, man. And it's so interesting to me that a lot of kids, at least back then, that's where they started with mowing. I think it's because it's accessible in your own neighborhood. And if you have the lawnmower, it's like you just go to your neighbor's door and you just knock on the door, right?
Yeah, we just flyered our neighborhood, and we actually had this John Deere mower. So very expensive at the time, well-built mower that we kind of invested in. I think my dad helped us front the money for it, and we paid him back. But we walked to we didn't have a trailer or anything. So we just walked to our client's house, and we mowed so many lawns and walked that thing so many miles that the wheels fell off of it. So it was held by wire and paper clips, and it was super janky, but it worked. And that kind of showed me discipline and, skills of taking care of your assets.
So you did that. Okay. So you were growing up, you did that. Then you brought up the drone thing. Was that in high school or much later?
So in high school, I always wanted to get into side hustle stuff, but I played sports and
So your time
hung
was
out with
just like,
friends. I didn't really have time. So it was really, that was kind of just, I worked at a pizza shop at the time, and that was fun, in a golf course too. Um, but high school wasn't really conducive for side hustles. So in college is when I really ramped it up. So my brother and I would buy textbooks from people on campus. We'd like walk to the bookstore. There'd be a huge line of people, and we found that we could do like an arbitrage thing where we'd buy it from the students that were selling their books back at the end of the year. We'd give them more than the bookstore, so they were happy, and then we'd go sell them online and make double our money. So it was pretty good money. So we did that. We did.
What were you selling them on? eBay?
Chegg, eBay, Craigslist. It kind of depended. Then I ended up automating it. I think I tapped, I'm forgetting what it was, Chegg's API, whatever the company was. I tapped somebody's API and made it all automated. So people could come to my website, get a quote, and then email me if they wanted to sell the book to me. And then I would go over and, I'd have all the data. So I'd go over, I already knew going into that transaction when I met up with them that how much I'd make on it. So it was like, I could quickly say, no, I don't want to do that. Yes, I do. I'll take this book. Don't want that one. What we ended up doing though, was every time we did a little side hustle like that, we would not really spend the money, maybe take a little bit off, but just channel that into the next one. So it's like we use that money to go fund these huge parties. So we'd rent out these like water parks, or there's one in Omaha called Sokol Arena, like big arenas. Mm-hmm. And we'd bring in, thousands of people and do these big parties where we had like pallets of paint or pillows, and we do like huge pillow fight parties, or, bring in like EDM awesome. DJs, stuff like that. So it's always been kind of a like just one to the next to the next.
I've done a few like that, but on yachts in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, I haven't done it on a yacht. But.
Yeah. No, but this is in our 30s. It's like, oh, what are we going to do for New Year's? Let's just rent a yacht and then sell tickets and pack it up with booze and food. And, we did it a couple of times and it worked. We made a little bit of money and everybody was happy, right?
And you have a great time.
That's awesome, man. So college. So you go through college. Did you graduate or you drop out?
Graduated, yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Yep. So you graduated college, and then at that point, obviously, you're getting a taste. You're already doing it. You're already making money. So did you go out in the quote unquote real world? It's like, okay, now I'm going to get a real job. Or did you go, no, I got to come up with the next big thing?
So in the back of my head, I always knew that I wanted to go and come up with the next big thing. But in college, the side hustles were fun. I made quite a bit of money doing those, but it wasn't anything to bat an eye at. Like at the time for college student, it was great. But I used that money for a down payment on a house and bought that, but I still have, expenses, overhead, things like that. So when I was about ready to graduate, I was an Uber driver. Uber kind of started coming up and they rolled out to Omaha then. And so I started Uber driving, and at the time they'd only give you a couple 2-minute, 3-minute long videos. You'd watch those and just be out figuring out how do you do it. You had to find your own way. Yeah. So I started this little blog, which is now called rideshare.com. And that was just an informational resource for drivers to go get information. So it started as a little blog, and I ended up ramping that thing up using SEO and content marketing to, at its peak, it was getting 1.5 million people to it a month. And I was
making amazing, man. That's awesome.
Incredible money on it. So I was doing that. And
so you were making more money on the blog than actually Uber driving.
Oh yeah. They were
great.
At the time, Uber was giving out these $1,000 bonuses for each driver I referred. So it was just dumb money. But I didn't really know much about content marketing and SEO. So right out of college, and I ran that for a few years before I went full time. But so I started it in college, graduated, went to work for my dad's event planning company. He owns this company that does, they plan and produce big, huge corporate events for like Fortune 500 companies and stuff. Mm-hmm. So there was an opening at his company. So I asked if I could come work there. I've known the business all my life because I've grown up around it. And then
I'm surprised you didn't go there from like straight from high school. Like, there's a whole family business deal.
He wouldn't let me. So the initial I wanted to, but he said he wants me to go. There were a couple conditions. One, get a degree from college. That's why I did it. I hate school. I was like a C student.
I dropped out. I started my own business and just dropped out. My parents were pissed, super pissed. But,
he always wanted me to do the higher education route. I suck at school, but I was like, okay, I'll go.
Me too. I was horrible.
Yeah. I was always trying to do other stuff.
The frat parties, that was a whole different story. But the whole party at Florida State. But the actual school side of things, like no.
Yep. So I wanted to do that, but he wanted me to go get a degree. So I did that. Then when he wanted me to go get a master's degree before working there, but it didn't end up doing that. I got hired because the timing was right. And I worked there for a few years, loved the job. At the time, though, I was making so much on the other stuff that I realized like this, I need to dedicate more time to it. And that's kind of how I started out on my own. So I quit there, ran the company or my little company full time, and I've expanded it from one site into 13. So I have now a portfolio.
That's awesome, man. That's great. So I'm just trying to piece, put the pieces together, how we got to gigworker.com. So like, what made you to go this route for this type of, niche, I guess I should say.
Sure. So I, did the rideshare thing, grew that about as big as I could at the time.
Which makes sense now that I'm thinking about it, because you did Uber for a little bit, right? You worked at a pizza shop at some point. Then you worked for your dad. Did he? At one point, you went to work for your dad, right?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So it was out of college. I went to work for him and started this rideshare site at the same time.
So what's rideshare?
That's my ride sharing website. The little Uber blog.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. All right.
Yeah. So I ended up, that was just a small little personal blog at the time that I just wrote about how to drive based on my experience driving. And then from there, I really scaled it into the point where it was making a lot of money. So at that point, I just realized I need to not work for my dad anymore. I need to focus all my energy on this SEO, this content thing that I've kind of stumbled upon almost accidentally. And then from there, that's when I made the leap. So after I started focusing on that site, I grew it to the point where I really couldn't grow it anymore. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, I'm making good money. How
old are you at this point?
I'm at that point, I was mid-20s.
Yeah,
so I'm 30 now.
I tell people all the time I'm 40 now, and I tell them, like, I look back and you think at 20, like early 20s or mid 20s, you're like, oh, I'm an adult now. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, no. 20s, you're still a teenager. And then 30s, it's like when you're like mature a bit. And then when you get to late 30s, that's like, oh, I guess I am now an adult. But you don't realize it at the time. I look back at my 20s and I thought I had it all figured out. And it's just, I look back, I was like, I was so fucking dumb.
Oh, yeah,
it's weird how you realize that. But that's great. So you're in your 20s, you're already at this point, which is amazing because you have access to, all this technology and the web, what's out there on the web. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, we were still playing with Napster. Facebook was just coming out. So right. It's a whole different story. I love hearing the story of like how younger generations come up with all this stuff. I find it really interesting. So all right. So where do we go from there?
So I grew that site to about as big as I could at the time. And there's only so many topics you can cover on a website. And so I found myself having all this time, and I kind of had this like quarter life crisis. I was 25 at the time because I had a quarter life crisis, I remember. And I was like, I have all this time. I don't know what I want to do. I'm making enough money to make ends meet. I really don't know what I want to do. So I started doing all these like passion things that like bucket list stuff. So I was learning to fly a helicopter. I got huge into scuba diving, and I'd been on a couple dive trips, and I was, I'm a master diver now, but at the time I was working towards that. And
where did you go?
I've been to the Great Barrier Reef, Turks and Caicos, St. Lucia. Cozumel is my favorite though.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Places. Yeah, I got great reefs.
I've been to a bunch of places here in Florida, but my favorite one that I've been to is Hawaii. I went to a bunch of places in Hawaii during my honeymoon, and that was so beautiful. But the reef, I want to go there at some point and definitely check out Turks and Caicos and all that stuff. I love diving, man. It's, I don't know if you're like me, but as I think as entrepreneurs, we're wired where our brain never stops. We're always thinking. At least that's the way I am. It's always going. Like, living by the beach and all that stuff. My wife loves to go out to the beach and actually just lay there and do nothing. I can't do that. I was like, I can't just sit here still doing nothing. That's just not the way that I'm wired. But for some reason, if I go diving, even though it's peace and quiet and there's no noise around you, it's all your own thoughts, that's the only time I can relax, man. There's something about it that is just so chill, and just looking at the wildlife underwater and just the coral reefs, and it's so chill. I love it. I highly recommend it. If you're like me and you can't like relax, that's the only one that's done it for me. And I've tried a bunch of things. That's so cool that you're a master diver.
So that's funny you say that, because the only two ways I can turn my brain off are one, scuba diving, and two, running. So if I go on like a 13-mile run, that I really don't think about anything because I'm just so focused on getting to the next point. So it's funny you say that. Isn't that
crazy?
About diving, that just nobody can talk to you, even if they want to, they can't. Like,
there's something so chill about it. It's just like, oh, fish, they're doing their own thing. Turtles,
like a huge
whatever.
whale comes by, and you're just like, oh, that thing's huge.
Did you see the story about that guy who got swallowed up by a whale?
I did. Yeah, that's crazy.
I couldn't believe it. Like, the guy apparently punched it in the throat, and that's how he got out. But it's like you're just minding your own business, swimming around, and all of a sudden a freaking whale just swallows you up.
No kidding.
Yeah, my wife saw that. She's like, I am not going diving ever again. I was like, come on. That's so cool. So, sorry, we just got sidetracked completely there. But okay, so you did the diving thing, and what happened after that?
Yeah, so I was on where I was going with that. Yeah, so I was on a little training dive. I was working towards some skills I needed for this class I was taking. And I was working on my skills in the pool, and I looked up one day, and I just saw these lights in the ceiling, and I was just thinking like about what the gig economy could become, because at the time it wasn't really a big thing. It was just ride sharing, but there were all these little companies like Airbnb, all these ones starting to pop up and like really get traction. So I was like, all right, well, I looked at the light and thought, well, like one light bulb is Ridester. That's the ride sharing niche. There's another one that's like Airbnb, like lodging, homes, things like that. And I just kind of like looked at all the light bulbs and thought, oh shoot, like I might be onto something if I expand outside this one niche. And I did that, and thought that idea, went back home after that dive and made some calls to my team, and we kind of just spun up the idea for Gig Worker.
That's awesome. So now you have the idea. Now, when you say your team, you already had like people you knew as developers, or you already had somebody who could write all the code. How did you have the idea, you put it all on a whiteboard or whatever. How do you make it? How did it go from there?
So that one has been a bit of a ride. So I had kind of a team, like working a full-time job in event planning, nonetheless, at my dad's company. That's like in itself a 70-hour week job. Like when you're out with clients who work in 12-hour days, you have zero free time. Yeah. And so in order to grow this Ridester site, I had to outsource a lot of it because I was working so much. And so in doing so, I kind of already had an outsourced team that, I spent a lot of money trying to figure out agencies that worked, that didn't. Ended up finding a good team, and they could just get stuff done and execute. So I called them up. It was mainly two things: content and developers. So they made this site. There was just a bunch of information. I thought, I'll put the info out first. It starts ranking in Google. I get traffic. I'll go backwards and build a platform around it after that. So got the content out there. It started ranking. The site within 6 months was getting like 150,000 people a month to it.
Hold on a second. So I just want to make sure I get it straight. So
sure. Yeah. Sorry.
So you built. So when you were building it was just content at first, and you have something on the domain that you were just trying to see if you will get traffic to it. Is that what you did?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yeah.
No, so okay. No, go ahead.
It was basically a big blog. So it was on the domain gigworker.com. I registered that. We made a site that looked okay. It wasn't great, but it looked pretty nice. And then we just went to town on content. So we published like 500 articles in, a 3-month span.
But that's the smart way to do it if you really think about it, because I see so many people that they do it the other way around. They have this idea, they don't know if it's proven, then they spend all this money on developers, on the website and all this stuff. and then they put it out there and crickets. Nobody's interested in it. So that is like, if the guys who are watching this or listening, if you're thinking about building a SaaS platform, like pay attention. Like this is one way of proof of concept before you spend all this money or spend all this time trying to build something out. If you don't even know if it's going to work, if people are interested in it.
And that was the thinking behind it was, I knew I could get people to the site using content because that's what I did with Rideshare. That's how I scaled it so big.
Right.
I also knew that companies would pay ad revenue, affiliate sponsorships, stuff like that. And so at worst, I would have this site that makes money passively. And then from there, I would take that money and self-fund this whole platform then based on the data I saw from what worked on the site. So we very much worked backwards. And so once we had the traffic, we had the data, we knew what people were looking for.
Were you collecting emails?
We were, yeah.
Yeah, building that list, man, smart. So you can just blast them when it goes live, right?
Yep. So we were doing the inbound aspect of it. I developed using WordPress, just an MVP. That did pretty well. So we knew what worked. And from there, we made I tried to make this whole app that like a whole directory type thing using like custom code. We were building it on Ruby on Rails for the back end, React from the front end. And the guy I hired to build it ended up kind of screwing me over. And that was a whole like really hard thing for me. But
oh, you got to tell the story now, man. This is how we learn what happened.
It was very much the skill set that was promised to me
was
not there. And it took me about 6 months to realize it. I was in doing that, with the content side of things, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew it was a bit of a risk, but I had an idea of what was going on. With a software platform though, the way he was developing it, I had never done that before. So I just trusted him to get it done, but he didn't know what he was doing. So then, long story short, this guy brought on a few other people. He was saying he was setting up these meetings with VCs. He wasn't. He just really didn't do anything, but he knew how to talk and manipulate me into thinking that, and I still gave him a paycheck. So it was very much a lesson learned on my end.
Yeah.
But
we all been there though. It's happened to me too. So
yeah. So anyways, I got rid of him, worked with this other guy. That didn't really go how we thought. Ended up just taking the whole thing back, got rid of them all. And now it's just, took about 6 months to emotionally just detach from that. And now we're growing it again. So we're actually redeveloping the site and adding the content and kind of just doing what I had done initially. Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, for sure. So it's right now gig worker. Let's go through what it actually offers in detail, because I want you to go so people know.
Yeah, so the site right now, there's two parts to it. There is one, a browsing function, and two, there's information. So there's a blog and there's a directory at its core. And you can go on and browse gigs available in the gig economy, whether you want to do rover and watch people's pets, whether you want to clean houses, care for people's grandmothers and grandfathers. There's all these categories. So you can just go and see what's available in each one. And
so
then,
I'm looking in here and I'm looking at find gigs, and you got browse old jobs, browse companies. And for example, under browse old jobs, you got Postmates, Instacart, DoorDash, Uber driver, Lyft driver. So I'm assuming if I click on one of these, it's just going to give me information about it and then send me to the listing.
Yep. So that will take you to a listing for what the company actually is. From there, you can see the jobs available. And then that's kind of like a route page, essentially, and then you can also browse a bunch of articles about that. So what we try to do is match you or provide a job or a gig. Mm-hmm. And then from there, provide you with all the information and resources via blog post about, how do you sign up? How do you make more money with it? How do you succeed in that role? So it's kind of just a foundational, no matter what you're looking to get into, we have information on that.
That's pretty awesome.
The gig economy and then actually do the gig.
Now, do you guys have an app version of it that people can download on iOS or Android?
We don't yet. That was one thing we were looking to build, but I just had to pull the reins back on that one because it wasn't working. We are looking to go that route again, but had to take some time off from that.
Yeah, it's in the plans at least.
Yeah, it's in the plans. Yeah, we have pretty big plans. We want to take all the user data, eventually take that and form an advocacy group. So if we have this huge bunch of people in the gig economy, users trying to make more money, get better rights, we'd like to take that and actually take it and start changing the gig economy for good. So better, almost like a lobbying group where we work on behalf of the gig worker to help them make more, have better options, things like that.
Now, when in order to grow the platform, are you working close with these companies, or are you just offering all the information based on the of the data that you guys have or the knowledge that you guys have?
So the idea was initially start with just try to get people to the site. We'll capture emails, we'll get users, we'll provide information. We're helping them get started in the gig economy. Once we have that, we'll kind of let the data tell us where do people need the most help. So then we're not quite to that stage yet, but once we are, then we'll start reaching out to the platforms like Instacart, like Uber, like all of those, and actually try to really come up with offerings that are very custom tailored to our audience. So that helps them, that helps the company, and it's kind of a win for everybody.
So right now, how's the site making money through through affiliate links? I'm assuming
affiliate links and direct ads. It's really simple right now.
Okay, and what's been the plan to keep growing it? Just SEO? Are you guys doing any type of paid advertising or marketing?
Paid advertising, not yet. Eventually, we'd like to develop some courses. We have a couple different things in the works. Courses for how to get started, how to pick a gig, things like that.
That's a great idea.
But with kind of those guys that I was working with and COVID, those two things we had to press pause on the site for a year. But we're very much getting into those things that are very helpful resources. And we think that'll really kind of help the site really grow quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you see? What do you think what obviously you have a plan, but what do you think the site's going to be in the next, let's say 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I want to hit the same numbers we hit for Ridester. So at least 1.5 million people a month. And we'll have in the next month, we're going through an intensive UX redesign right now to make the site a lot more helpful, a lot easier to use. And in doing that, we'll have a lot more things on the platform. We'll have a lot more information, and overall it should just grow in helpfulness. And then obviously with traffic and rankings and things like that.
Now, do you think from when you did the other blog and Google now, because all these platforms change all the time, like Facebook and all of them, do you find that it's easier to rank now? Are you doing things a lot differently that you did back then to rank?
I'm doing things pretty much the exact same way. I've always taken a very white hat approach to it. So people try to game the system. They try to do things quickly. They take shortcuts. I'm not that guy. I have no problem waiting 2 years investing into something before.
You're like me. You're like me. Yeah, do it the right way.
And I did that with Ridester. It's worked so far. So it's much harder to rank, but I don't take shortcuts. So I'm kind of doing what you're supposed to do, and I found that works really well for me.
So since SEO, let's say somebody is launching a new store, e-commerce store or a blog or whatever, what is the first thing you think they should do in order to just start getting at least a little bit of traction? What's your process there if you had to give a recommendation?
Do keyword research. So look up, there are free tools there's all sorts of them, but
SEMrush.
Yeah, SEMrush, Ahrefs, all of those. But there's also the Google Keyword Planner tool. It's a function of AdWords you can use. It's free. But just go and look in your niche what people are searching for and make helpful content around that. So if you run a coffee site and somebody's looking for how to make coffee, go after something that's low difficulty, but that's very helpful and that has a lot of search volume, and then if somebody's looking to make coffee, if they come to your site, if that blog post really takes off, then from within that, you can promote your offerings, you know, on the rest of your site. And it helps. They're already looking for how to make coffee. So of course they're going to want to buy it too.
Yeah, that's great advice. So last but not least, because we're running out of time, if you had to go back from the day you launched the site, gigworker.com, what would you have done differently that when you look back, you'll be like, man, I should have not done that, or I should have done this instead?
If I look back, I wouldn't have built the software platform. I would have kept going into content, because the content, it worked. It's proven. I would have not strayed outside my core competency. I understand you have to take risks sometimes, but I had something that was proven to work, and I stepped outside my comfort zone trying to grow quicker, and I should not have done that. I should have just stuck to what I known, and then eventually let that data tell us exactly what we want to produce.
There you go. There you guys have it. So where can everybody find you, so I can put the links in the description?
Yeah. So on the website, gigworker.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, or if you want to just send me an email, I love getting emails from people. It's brett@gigworker.com, BRETT@GIGWORKER.com. That's
pretty awesome. All right, everybody. If you're looking for a gig, or you're trying to learn to take advantage of how to make money with these companies, go to gigworker.com. If you know somebody who needs it, send them the site, gigworker.com. And Brett, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really, truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are still here, remember, smash like, subscribe, and that's it. Talk to you guys later. Till next time.